Welcome to the Eye Opener. I'm your host, Michael Lewis. Senator Josh Hawley introduced a bill, the Parents' Bill of Rights, to prevent left-leaning bureaucrats from taking over schools. Stephen Bannon has been indicted for defying a Democratic congressional subpoena. Texas House Representative Lance Gooden discovered nonprofits are helping illegal migrants beat the system in California. And Democrats are afraid of black influentials like Candace Owens, Larry Elder, and the new Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, Winsome Sears. Okay, my friends, let's take a closer look together. Republican Senator Josh Hawley will introduce the Parents' Bill of Rights bill to oppose woke bureaucrats taking over schools. The draft statement for Hawley's bill states, America has long recognized the right of parents to direct their children's education, but we are now seeing a concerted effort by the left to shut parents out. Parental rights, particularly in education, are increasingly under attack. It's time to give control back to parents, not woke bureaucrats, and empower them to start a new era of openness in education. In fact, the problem that exists in American education, parental involvement, is not a problem. It is precisely the solution. The document notes that across the country, parents have been ridiculed, bullied, and belittled by self-righteous bureaucrats and school board members. A document obtained by a parent at an Arizona school shows that the president of the Arizona School Board kept sensitive personal information about the protesting parents. Whether it's an attempt by Joe Biden's Attorney General Garland to categorize parents as domestic terrorists, or attempts by Garland's son-in-law and other activists funded with dark money to quietly introduce CRT into school curricula, education has become a base for the radical politics of the Marxist left in many schools, and parents are watching closely. The document quotes Virginia gubernatorial candidate Terry McAuliffe, who said he believes parents should not tell schools what they should teach. The infamous letter comparing the parents in question to domestic terrorists was sent shortly after the National School Board Association, NSBA, in coordination with the Justice Department, sent a memo to President Biden in late September urging that the FBI investigate threats at school board meetings. The legislation would set out 8 rights that parents would have in relation to their children's education and would empower parents to sue schools that do not protect those rights. Under the bill, a pattern of such violations in one jurisdiction would trigger a significant cut in federal education funding. The bill would also require that school board meetings related to curriculum safety and other student issues be held in public and allow for public comment. The Parents' Bill of Rights would include these rights: the right to know what their minor child is being taught in school, including but not limited to curricula, books, and other instructional materials. The right to visit the school and check in on their minor child during school hours. The right to all school records, medical or otherwise, concerning their minor child. The right to information about collection and transmission of their minor child's data. In an effort to take back power over the children's education, parents across the country have been active in speaking out at school board meetings to protest the restrictions of COVID-19 and certain measures pushed in the name of equity, such as transgender policies or CRT, and school board races have become big hits. Stephen Bannon, Trump's former White House strategist, turned himself into the FBI field office in Washington, D.C. on Monday to appear at a hearing after he was indicted by a federal grand jury for defying a Democrat congressional subpoena. Bannon faces 2 counts of criminal contempt, one for refusing to appear at a congressional deposition and the other for refusing to produce documents following a committee subpoena. Each count has a sentence of 30 days to a year in prison. The indictment is the first criminal contempt of Congress case in nearly 4 decades. The charges were filed Friday by the Justice Department, a move that comes as the committee faces a growing number of uncooperative former White House employees regarding the January 6th breach of the Capitol. Former President Trump's chief of staff, Mark Meadows, also didn't show up for his subpoena on Friday. Before entering the FBI building, Bannon told his supporters in a live stream of his War Room show, "I don't want anybody to take their eyes off the ball of what we do every day. We got the Hispanics coming on our side. The African Americans are coming on our side. We're taking down the Biden regime." At a brief hearing Monday, Bannon was released without bond, required to surrender his passport, get approval before leaving Washington, D.C., and complete weekly check-ins with the court by phone. He is scheduled to be arraigned on Thursday. Bannon recently expanded his legal team to fight the charges. Bannon has reportedly hired Trump's impeachment lawyers, David Schoen and Evan Corcoran, to represent him. Corcoran, a former U.S. attorney, also represents Michael Riley, a U.S. Capitol Police officer who was charged with obstruction of justice after advising a Capitol rioter to remove video evidence of the raid from his social media accounts. It is the second time in 15 months that Bannon has faced criminal charges. In August 2020, he was accused of defrauding donors to fund efforts to complete sections of the border wall, but was eventually pardoned by former President Trump. But Bannon argued that he should not have to comply with the subpoena and pointed to Trump's instructions that the move violated his executive privilege. The committee called the claim invalid, arguing that only a sitting president can block testimony and the release of documents to Congress. Fred Upton, one of the 10 House Republicans who voted to impeach President Donald Trump last year, said Sunday he was unsure whether he would run for another term. Asked by the media if he was planning to run for re-election next year, Upton said he wasn't sure because redistricting in Michigan is still a work in progress. Upton has represented Michigan's 6th congressional district since 1993 and has been in office since 1987. If he decides not to run for re-election, he would become the third member of Congress to vote for Trump's second impeachment, announcing his retirement. Two Republicans who voted for Trump's impeachment, Representative Anthony Gonzalez and Representative Adam Kinzinger, have announced they will leave office at the end of the current Congress. Over the weekend, Trump lashed out at Upton and other Republican lawmakers who joined Democrats in impeaching him. He urged pro-American First patriots to step up and challenge these men, and he pledged to support them. Some are already facing party challengers, including Upton, Representative Peter Meyer, and Representative Jamie Herrera Butler. Upton's challengers include State Representative Steve Carra, insurance broker Gina Johnson, and military veteran John Rocha. Trump was ultimately acquitted by the Senate, even though 7 Republicans voted to convict him. Republicans hope to flip both chambers in the upcoming midterm elections. Republicans currently hold 8 fewer seats in the House than Democrats. In the Senate, each side holds half the seats, but Democrats controls the chamber through a tiebreaker vote with Vice President Kamala Harris can cast as the body's chairman. Texas House Representative Lance Gooden said on Monday that when he got a tip from a San Diego whistleblower, he uncovered a covert operation to house and transfer illegal immigrants within the United States. Nonprofit organizations were also providing them with packets of information on how to navigate and assimilate into the country. They used abandoned hotels in several California cities as shelters for the illegals, including SeaWorld, the 4 Points by Sheraton, and a Ramada Inn. Gooden managed to get inside the gates where he saw buses pull up, and within an hour, roughly 100 illegal immigrants got off. Upon arrival, the immigrants were tested for COVID and then handed a packet of information. Gooden said he got a sample packet of what these nonprofits are handing out to the illegal migrants from the whistleblower a few weeks ago. It details how to get to the airport, how to get through the Transportation Security Administration, TSA, without any identification, how to get your children enrolled in school, and assimilate into whatever community you wish to go. The Texas congressman said he spoke with the TSA about the packages, and the TSA told him that immigrants sometimes show up with very convincing letters, and in some cases are put on the plane before anyone else. An armed security officer told Gooden that immigrants were often already on the plane when he boarded earlier to tell the pilots of his presence. The biggest purveyors of the operation are Catholic Charities and the Jewish Family Association in San Diego, the nonprofit with donors including AT&T, Bank of America, and the federal government, Gooden said. You can imagine the federal government's role here. The late distinguished Fox News personality Charles Krauthammer said, "Conservatives think liberals are stupid, liberals think conservatives are evil. But it is true that liberals are afraid of conservatives. Liberals fear conservatives they see as a threat. Conservatives in position of power, conservatives who speak out and have an audience base, conservatives who threaten the liberal storyline by telling Americans the truth, and even more threatening, conservatives who expose liberal lies." The Democrats and their leftist media are afraid of influencers, from President Donald Trump to Tucker Carlson to Steven Crowder and many other conservatives, not because they were hated, but because they were feared. Now, a newcomer has joined the club, Winsome Sears, the newly elected Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. Not only is she Virginia's next Lieutenant Governor, she's also the first black woman to win a statewide office. The leftist media was apparently appalled by this amazing turn of events, with MSNBC's racially biased host, Joy Reid, and guest and race expert, Michael Eric Dyson, laughably trying to paint Sears as a puppet of white supremacists. Sears recently dismissed leftist author Jamil Hill's silly white supremacist nonsense and challenged Joy Reid to invite her on Reid's show. Sears exposed the Democrats' empty promises and outright lies, making them feel threatened and scared. Americans are sick of the Democrats deliberately pitting one race against another. They are sick of blacks against whites and Asians against Latinos. They are also tired of politicians who won't let the wounds of the past heal. Americans need to hear all the history and the sins of the past so they are not repeated. But we don't have to destroy one race in order to build up the other. That's not America. Allowing the wounds of the past to heal does not mean forgetting history. She said, "Everything I had, I've had to work hard for. No one gave me anything. Sometimes what happens to you isn't because you're black or because you're a woman, it's simply life. I mean, some days you're the pigeon and some days you're the statue. It's just life." Sears continued, "I really want others to see me, especially the children, and say, well, if Winsome can do it, I can do it." She said her American experience and the historic election was the exact opposite of the racist Marxist-derived CRT claimed by the Democrats. The Democrats' dirty little secret is the harsh reality that, in fact, the Democratic Party does not want black Americans to achieve the American dream, and it desperately needs black Americans to remain permanently on the lower rungs of society as a voting bloc so that the Democratic Party can get enough votes to survive. Therefore, arrogant black people like Tim Scott, Thomas Sowell, Larry Elder, Candace Owens, Red State's Kira Davis, and Winsome Sears must be dismissed out of hand, ridiculed, and if necessary, destroyed. On Sunday, conservative radio host and constitutional lawyer Mark Levin commented on his show that the New York Times, MSNBC, and many other leftist media people are actually real racist and anti-Semites for their nonsensical and illogical accusations that the election results in Virginia were the product of racial prejudice. In her book, Beyond Belief, Emory University professor Deborah Lipstadt said that censorship in the media was a widespread institutional problem as far back as the Holocaust. She wrote, "The press bears a great measure of responsibility for the public skepticism and ignorance of the scope of the wartime tragedy, the Nazis' mass murder of Jews. The public's doubt were strengthened and possibly even created by the manner in which the media told the story." Professor Laura Leff of Northeastern University meticulously examined the role of media outlets such as the New York Times during the Holocaust, and she found that the Times ran between 12 and 15 front-page stories a day. Less than half of them dealt with the war, and Arthur Hayes Salzberg, publisher of the Times, deliberately buried news about the Holocaust deep in his paper on many occasions, or ignored it altogether. The murder of millions of Jews being a relatively unimportant story. So the media concealed from the American public most of what they knew about the Holocaust. In 1932, because the Ukrainians would not join Stalin's communist communes, they would not allow their land, which had been passed down through the generations, to be taken by the communists. Stalin ordered the extermination of the Ukrainians in a genocide. He cut off Ukraine in every way imaginable, resulting in 6 million Ukrainians starving to death. And during that time, Walter Duranty, a journalist for the New York Times who spent 14 years as chief in Moscow, claimed that the Holodomor, or hunger, was caused by bad harvest. In fact, Stalin paid him a salary and made sure he had the best food, a girlfriend, and a car. There were some British journalists who actually went into the Ukraine and saw the truth for themselves, and they were disgusted and angry with Duranty. And Duranty surprisingly won a Pulitzer Prize for his reporting. Half a century ago, a New York Times correspondent in Cuba had been campaigning for the communist Fidel Castro, talking about how Castro had thousands of freedom fighters, people who wanted democracy supporting him, and eventually Castro overthrew the government there and then thanked the Times for helping him. And then he became an enemy of the United States. Then there was the so-called Russiagate, with all the uproar from the left media like the New York Times. It was a farce that was planted from the start and ended in failure. The Marxist left loves to throw the big racist label on anyone who supports the Constitution, loves America, believes in the flag and the anthem, the American military, and the police. The legacy media, the Democratic Party of Marxists, and of course, the radicals who are part of BLM and Antifa love to call anyone else racist and say that there is systemic racism. Then again, Jonathan Capehart of MSNBC called Winsome Sears' election of lieutenant governor of Virginia a product of racial prejudice by racist Virginia voters. As long as you vote against the American Marxist agenda, you are clearly a racist. The truth is that the United States is the most diverse and free country on earth. With the most liberal economic system, you can do anything you want to do, be anything you want to be, and get an education you want to get. It's up to you as an individual human being. Jonathan Capehart does not see blacks as individual human beings. He dehumanizes us. In fact, the media that has completely deviated from basic journalistic principles can no longer be called media. It might be more appropriate to call members of the media Marxist leftist mouthpieces, which is why it is said that the New York Times and MSNBC are racist and anti-Semitic media. That's it for today, my friends. Check out the playlist right here for more eye-opening content. You can join me in the Eye Opener Telegram chat room and follow me on Newmaker, Gab, Parler, and Getter. And don't forget, please sign up to the email list so that we can stay in touch. I'd like to thank you all, and I'll see you next time.